Good morning, everybody, and happy Monday. We're going to go ahead and get started with this month's preparedness webinar series. Today, we're going to discuss developing an effective fire prevention program in your community. And we're joined today by Mike Davenport from the Omaha Fire Department.
Hello, y'all.
Morning, Mike. Just some audience on the screen description and then webinar objectives. So we're going to talk about identifying at-risk individuals for fires and other catastrophes, discuss the healthcare team's roles and responsibilities, and then describe what interventions and educational approaches can help reduce the number of children and youth who play with fire based on the capabilities of the Youth Firesetter Intervention Program. Today's webinar for viewing of the live recording is accredited for 1 continuing education hour for physicians, nurses, and EMS providers. Disclosure statement on the screen. Our faculty today have no disclosures, and our planning committee, just Dr. James Lawler, does have a disclosure, which is listed on the screen here. For any Q&A today, if you could please place that into the question and answer function on Zoom, and we'll answer your questions at the end of today's presentation. And then this is the information to obtain your continuing education following the conclusion of the webinar. And this will also be posted at the end. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mike Davenport. Mike currently serves the citizens of Omaha as the public education coordinator for the Southwest District and the Youth Fire Intervention Specialist working with the Youth Firesetters since 2016. Michael has been a firefighter for over 20 years and shares his expertise as an adjunct instructor in the Fire Science Technology program at Metropolitan Community College. As a youth fire intervention specialist, Michael has led this program in initiating strong mitigation strategies for youth through education and engagement with a goal of reducing cases through education and intervention. Michael is committed to community partnerships and believes in facilitating positive experiences for families and youth. As part of his commitment to the community, Michael has the honor of working with Project Harmony in the Juvenile Justice Court and identifying the correct services for families in need. Michael holds his bachelor's degree in communication and public relations from Dana College, an associate's degree in fire science from Southeast Community College, and is NFPA certified as Youth Firesetter Educator. Michael's a member of the Omaha Fire Department Historical Society and Honor Guard in his off time. He's also a proud military vet who served 3 tours with the Army. And with that, Mike, we'll turn it over to you.
Awesome. Thank you for your time. Just wanted to touch base with everybody and welcome. I am not a death by PowerPoint person, but I will bring it up just so everybody can see it. And we'll kind of follow along from there. And I'll get that up and we should be up and running. So Lauren did introduce myself, but here's just a little bit more about me. Currently working out of Project Harmony. That's where I office out of 2 days a week. And the other 2 days a week, I'm here at Station 10, about 50th and Pine in Omaha, Nebraska, where we talk to kids, adults about fire safety. So today's topics, I want to really kind of make this more of an entertainment, have fun, and also do a little learning. Basically what I do with every class that I try to do. What is public education? The basics of fire safety. Other events that we respond to. We have a lot of frequently asked questions, and I'll try to get to some of those at the end. And I'll kind of go over the most frequently asked questions that we receive and try to answer those ahead of time. Then we'll finally get into the last part will be the fire intervention. That's where my specialty is dealing with young adults that start fires, and then we'll move on from there. So what is public education? And really this is, and I understand that the title was preparedness, developing an effective fire prevention program for the community. And really fire prevention starts with all of us. And no matter how big or small the fire department is, we need everyone's help in doing this. So what we do at the Omaha Fire Department, we take a proactive approach, making sure that we are spreading the word to individuals of all ages. And we'll talk a little bit about our Remember When project, all the way from the little kids all the way down to adults 55 and older. We'll talk about our smoke detector program. Really, that's one of our biggest things that we're pushing right now. Smoke detectors are free. And if you live in the city of Omaha and Elkhorn, if you do not have one or can't afford one, we'll be glad to get you one. We do have our deaf and hard of hearing smoke detector program. Basically, that is for people that are hard of hearing, all the way up to being completely deaf. We have what we call our bed rattler. Basically, it looks like a little fire alarm, and it's right beside your bed. It also has a little clock in it, but it is also hooked up to what we call a bed shaker. So that goes under the bed, and that will shake the bed to let you know there is a fire. What else do? We do station tours. That's kind of been our big thing since after the initiation of and the big part of COVID. We did recently open back up our fire stations for fire station tours. That's been fun for all ages, including the adults. We have school assemblies, group presentations, apparatus displays. As a matter of fact, we have, looks like we have 4 rigs out right now doing a presentation everywhere from preschool to a grade school. The Remember When series that's for our seniors. What that basically is for those over 55, we can basically even come into your house. We also go and talk to assisted living programs. And we talk about the slips, trips, and falls, what we can do to make their home safer. And then finally, where I'm at is youth fire intervention, and we'll get quite a bit deeper into that in just a bit. So fire safety. Since it is Fire Safety Month, I just thought we'd start out with this, have a little fun with it. So, and I usually ask this question to all the adults in the room, and has everybody tested their smoke detectors? And I'm sure in the comments, there's going to be a whole bunch of people that says absolutely. But do us a favor, do yourself a favor, do your family a favor, and make sure you test your smoke detectors. Those smoke detectors should be tested at least once a month. And then making sure that you change out the batteries every 6 months. And note that smoke detectors are only good for 10 years. We have had a lot of calls recently about those smoke detectors. The ones that keep beeping, even though you've changed out the battery, you might want to check the expiration date on those. And also make sure you look and see if they're hardwired. In other words, if they're actually wired into a system that will tell all the other alarms that your smoke detectors are going off, make sure you're really aware that those are only good for 10 years. So all rooms should have at least 2 ways out. We do have a new campaign, and obviously you can go onto our website. We're pretty proud of our website. We have a lot of good things going on there. It's called Close Before You Doze. As a matter of fact, one of our own Omaha firefighters, Sheena Glover, made a beautiful video, and it's kind of catchy. It's called Close Before You Doze. You can check that out. But what we're telling families is everyone should be sleeping with their doors closed. Why is that? Well, because if you sleep with your door closed, most of the times fires do not start in your bedroom. If you sleep with your door closed and the fire starts in the kitchen or a living room, you'll have more time to react. And of course, if you had that second way out, would be a window, you'd fill the door if you wanted to exit. then you'd have the window, then you also standby. So that's why we really are talking about this year. And matter of fact, the NFPA's biggest promotion for this year is home fire escape plans, and we'll get a little more into that. So who will call 911? This is just an example. What happens at your house? So I ask you all as an audience, take a second and ask yourself, if there was a fire in your home today, what would you do? You'll see this is that dramatic pause, right? This is where I would hope that everyone has practice, or at least after today, practice a fire drill. Isn't it odd that in the city of Omaha, city of Omaha and Elkhorn, that we require that there's at least 6 fire drills per year for every school? How many fire drills have you had at your home? Usually this is where I get a great audience participation, and all the moms, dads, parents, and guardians are dropping their head and going, we haven't ever had a fire exit drill. So in that fire exit drill, there's some important things to talk about. Number one, making sure that you have a smoke detector and it works, and making sure that everyone in your family knows what it sounds like. Once you do that, talk about where you're going. Does everybody have 2 ways out? If there's smoke in your room or smoke in the house, what are you going to do? This is basically our kid talk. And basically, most of us are, hopefully, a lot of you had that talk in about 3rd grade about get low and go. So we always start out with 3 things. This is what we kind of do at all the schools. So mom, dad, parent, or guardian, they're going to test your smoke detector for you tonight. After that, they're going to show you what you should do if there's smoke in your room. This is where you get low and go. Then you're going to get out and stay out. And once you're out, where do you go? This is really what we're working on this year also, is having a meeting spot. It's real important for us as a fire department, and for you. Number one, when we pull up to the fire that might be at your home, we're going to ask the adults, ma'am, sir, is everyone out? We will know that if you guys are all at your meeting spot. We took an oath with our badge to risk our lives to save yours, but I would hate for us to have to risk our lives to find out that, you know what, I thought he was inside, but he actually went next door. So really, that's kind of why we're working on that. That's why we're working on that so much with that. And for my particular family, we meet at the mailbox. We know that. Look, I've been on 20 years. My family's pretty fire safety conscious, but we all know that we're going to meet at the mailbox. That's our job. If the smoke detector goes off and there is really a fire, we're going to meet at the mailbox. And that way I'll know as an adult that my family is out and safe. And also, when the fire department pulls up, the first thing that's going to happen is a captain is going to get off of the passenger side and he's going to say, ma'am, sir, is everyone out? Next thing he's going to do is a 360. And if somebody is trapped inside and they're by their window, if you've talked about that, we're going to make sure that we get them out quickly and efficiently. So fire is a tool, not a toy. That's the next thing we usually go into when we're talking about fire safety. And obviously, with it being October, we love to talk about that. So here's how I describe it when I'm talking about fire as a tool, not a toy. I usually would ask the audience, and I usually ask the little ones, can somebody give me an example of a tool? And usually they might say a saw or a screwdriver. And usually these are things that an adult might use, right? So, and then I would ask the kids, hey, are children allowed to use a chainsaw? And most of them will say, absolutely not. Well, that's much like fire. Fire is a tool, not something we would play with, not anything that would be a toy. Usually the next question out of my mouth, and this is going to be great for this audience, and I know we're all professionals here, so you probably know the answer to this, but is there a fire in your house right now? Dramatic pause, right? So there probably, and most of the adults will say yes, some will say, no, there's not a fire at my house, Mike. Are you crazy? Well, actually, and this is where I get in with the kids, and we catch that audience of, actually, there is. That's how you keep your water warm. That's how we have hot water, if you have hot water. Also, that's how we cook with. And also, that's what the fire, that little pilot light underneath there, that's what's keeping our houses warm. So that's kind of a little bit about fire as a tool and a toy. And this is my favorite question to every audience, and I ask this every time. When was the first time you were introduced to fire? Some people say never, which is awesome. If you're a male, I would find that answer hard to believe. Most males have, at some point, they say that 80 to 90% of all males have at least played with some sort of fire early on, usually about 9 to 12 years old. So I always ask that question. It's interesting to watch what happens with the audience. So what do we do, and what does the Omaha Fire Department do? So the Omaha Fire Department responded just about over 65,000 calls in 2021. And over 80% of those calls were medically related, meaning anything from a broken arm, car accidents, to slip, trip, and fall, grandma needs help up, whatever it might be. That includes that 65,000. Other things that we do, not just besides fire, because everybody thinks, hey, you're a fireman, that's all you do is fire. Well, that's not necessarily true. Other things that you can see on the PowerPoint is we do water rescue. We also have a dive team. We do trench rescue. I believe we had in 2021, we had 3 trench rescues. We do hazmat spills, ammonia leaks. That's a little bit along the hazmat side. Help a person up, everything from, you know what, grandma just fell, she needs some help up getting back into her chair. We'd be glad to come out and do that. That's what we do. We've dealt with explosions, most of those CO explosions recently, confined space, high angle, and everything from down to car accidents. So that's a little bit of the other things that we do just besides fire. So frequently asked questions, I would just want to get to this real early. How many employees do we have? We have approximately 680 employees, depending on the day. How many stations are there? There's 24 stations throughout the city of Omaha and Elkhorn. Our schedule is, if you're with the Omaha Fire Department, I don't know anybody that doesn't like our schedule. So we work a 24-hour shift. We come in at 7 a.m., we leave at 7 a.m. We do that for a day on, day off for 5 days, and then we're off for 6. So if you do the math real quickly, we work about 10 days a month. Most people in the audience are saying, wow, you guys only work 10 days a month. You have to understand that we do work a 24-hour period. Once we're here at the fire station, we're not allowed to go home. You know, like the wife calls and says that, hey, the little one has a bloody nose. What do I do? That type of thing. We are here for the citizens 24 hours a day. We can have anywhere from 10 calls a day, all the way up to Fire Station 21, who recently just had 21 calls a day. So it just depends on the day and what station you're at. So that's what we like about our schedule, is those day off, day on between. That's usually the day off. The day off between is usually where we kind of get our rest, get rested up, get ready for the next day. And then the 6 days off, a lot of us had to do other things, and that's kind of where I teach on my days off. I teach at Metro Community College, so you'll see most firefighters have something else that they do besides firefighting. And we try to keep that light, so we're number one, 100% ready to serve the citizens at all times. What is our average response time? And this is where I really get the kids involved, and mom, dads, whoever's on here, please share this with your kids. So it's important when they dial 911 or you dial 911, that number one, our average response time in the city of Omaha and Elkhorn is 3 to 5 minutes. So we're going to be there very quickly. Do not hesitate to dial 911. We have found that most of the times when that hesitation begins and you don't call us right away, the fire or whatever the emergency is gotten further along, and now we're playing catch up. So the sooner you dial 911, the better. We tell kids they probably shouldn't be calling 911 unless they at least know their address and phone number. Let a guardian, mom, dad, parent, or guardian do that for you. What is that's our average response time? This is one of my best ones, and we get asked this a lot. Why does a med unit and a fire truck show up on a medical call? Great question. So there's 2 people on a medical unit. There's 4 people on a fire truck. When you dial 911, and we may not necessarily get the right information, there might be some miscommunications on your part, our part, whatever it might be. We always want to overwhelm our enemy, which is whatever you've called us for, whether it's a fire, CPR in progress, broken arm. We would rather have enough manpower there to be able to mitigate the situation quickly than not have enough power and now we have to call someone else. So we can always, once a med unit's there and they say, hey, we can handle this, awesome, we'll go back in service and we'll go to our next run. So that's why we have so many people. And as most of us in the medical community know, 6 to 8 people doing CPR is really what needs to happen, especially in pre-medicine, to get them to the hospital as quickly as possible. Why we are called a paramilitary organization. And this is sometimes where we as firefighters, also police officers, sometimes we may come off as a little abrupt. We don't mean to. That's kind of the way we handle our situations is number one, that we want to make sure that we're getting the facts, just the facts, and being able to move on from the situation and mitigate the situation as quickly as possible. So when we say that we're a paramilitary organization, I don't have time to ask my partner, hey, bud, can you do me a favor? We just need to go grab that 1 3/4. That's a pretty big fire over there. And then when you get it, I'll come over and help you and we'll work on this. That's kind of not the way it works here. So we're a paramilitary organization. So we do what we're told when we're told. And if we have questions or concerns or something we need to talk about, we'll talk about that later. Again, really, it's about us mitigating the situation as quickly as possible and moving on to the next step of care, or being able to move on to getting the fire out, getting those people into a better situation, whether it's Red Cross shows up, whoever might show up to be able to help them secure their home so they can move on. So let's talk about, and when this is really, this is my bread and butter, the meat and potatoes of what I do. And this is Youth Firesetter intervention. And we'll get into that a little bit. So in all this, we've talked about a lot of things. And really, if you read our mission statement, it says protecting lives, property, and the environment through the community, prevention, preparation, and protection. And prevention is where we come in. Prevention is everyone's, I shouldn't say problem, but is everybody's situation where we can prevent things. It can be as simple as putting on your safety belt, right? That's a prevention. Prevention for us means quite a few other things, such as making sure everybody has smoke detectors, making sure everybody knows what to do in case of a tornado, making sure everybody knows the little ones after about 10, 12 years old know how to dial 911 in case something happens to mom, dad, parent, or guardian. So prevention is where we come in. And also what we're trying to do in my particular department, which is the youth fire intervention piece, is trying to prevent a bigger fire. So basically we found out a kid was playing with fire. What do we do and how do we prevent it? And that's where my department comes in. So a lot of people ask where this idea came up that, hey, we're going to have an individual and that's all they're going to work on is making sure that kids aren't playing with fire. And if they are, they're well educated and being able to get the help or services they need. The reason is, as you can see on the slide, it was on April 23rd, 1996, one of our own firefighters, John Gessling, died in a fire due to the fact that a child was playing with fire. This child was well noted throughout the neighborhood. I've done a lot of research on this. It sounds like the neighborhood knew that he was playing with fire, started some leaves on fire. One of his neighbors said, oh yeah, I always saw him out in the backyard. He was playing with some matches and starting some leaves on fire. On this particular date, he was by the dollar store on 30th Street. He was playing with some matches. Actually, he was playing with a lighter. He lit some leaves on fire next to a fence. That particular wooden fence started on fire, and what happened was that fire and smoke went into the intake, the air conditioning and heating unit, went into the intake of that particular store and started on fire. While John was in there, the ceiling collapsed and unfortunately he passed away. And at the end, hopefully if we have time, I'll show you a video that I do particularly just for my youth fire kids. Josh and Nate Gessling, their son, John's sons, both are on the Omaha Fire Department, are both captains. Very proud of that. And we've worked with them and they've really been able to help out my program, which is Youth Fire Intervention. So who are our fire setters and what is the program all about? So again, what we're here to do is identify them. And we'll get into a little bit about how we identify them. Evaluation, something we do on our end. It's called the Oregon scale. That's how we evaluate every youth fire setter. Basically, it's a scale that we go through. We will meet with the individual who started the fire with their mom, dad, parent, or guardian. We'll get through the evaluation, and we'll, as a department, will make a decision whether we're going to educate the child, which is basically a 1-hour fire safety class, or we're going to move on and be able to get them into and refer them to other services. So again, as I told you, I'm not big into death by PowerPoint, but this is basically we evaluate, educate if we can. We'll make those referral services, and then we'll do an exit and follow-up. Our follow-ups are every 30 and 60, 90 days. Program is designed to be voluntary. So if if there is a child that is reported to me that started a fire, this is 100% voluntary. It's not mandatory. They don't have to do it. But we really push that as this is a should do, because obviously they're playing with fire. Most kids playing with fire do not actually know the power of fire, what it does, how fast it can grow. So we get into all those with our kids. Again, it's voluntary. So I kind of skipped over that a little bit, but how do I find out about them? How I find out about them is several ways. Number one, let's say a fire truck goes to the house and, there's a small fire. We'll get into that investigation portion of it. We'll find out, was it a kid playing with the fire? How old are they? What were they doing at the time? And once I find that out, I'll go ahead and take over from there, and we'll get into some family dynamics, and we'll find out about it from there. Other places we can find out about it is from not just the fire trucks, basically 911 call, schools. We do have a lot of schools on board with us now, going out and making sure that, hey, you know what, this little one lit a paper towel in the bathroom on fire. They'll report to us. We do have self-reporting. Moms and dads will call us and say, hey, my kid was playing with some fire. Can we get him some help? Other ways is our fire investigators. So our fire investigators go out and investigate the fire, and maybe mom, dad, parent, or guardian weren't truthful with us. They'll do a little more investigation and find out it was the kid, and then they'll come talk to us. So those are kind of about the 5-6 ways that we find out about whether a kid was playing with fire. And after speaking to one of my mentors out of Maryland, I come to find out that about 40 to 50%, we're still missing 40 to 50% of the people, the little ones that are playing with fire, mostly because mom and dad don't want anybody to know about it. So we're working on that end. We're doing our best we can on our end to make sure we educate the public that we're here. So personals involved. So what I'm certified intervention specialist. That's an NFPA class. What our first thing is to do is identify the risk. What is the risk? Is it a little risk? Was this the little one, maybe 5-6 years old, found a lighter and was playing with it? So is it little risk, definite risk, extreme risks? And we'll get into a little bit more about that. And we'll get into how we categorize them as a youth fire setter. I really hate using that word. We're trying to get away from that. That's why we call it youth fire intervention. They're not necessarily youth fire setters. I don't like to identify them as that. I like to then identify them as kids that were playing with fire that needed some education or need some help in other ways. So the program that we have is all research-based. It's from the Fire Administration, Federal Emergency Management, the FEMA organization. We have 4 specialists here, not only myself, but we have 4 specialists, and we're called Youth Fire Intervention Specialists. So any of us can teach the class. We have a protocol in place, our standard operating procedures that tell us exactly how to handle this if we have to, and making sure that we're in a safe environment, making sure we're doing everything legally. So the continuum of care, this is kind of how it starts. The fire interest, fire starting, fire setting, all the way up to arson. The behaviors themselves, we can get into that a little bit. So, and I will tell you, there is a lot of miscommunications about a pyromania. So just real quick about pyromania, talking to my mentor in Maryland again, really kind of been my go-to guy. And actually he came here to Omaha and taught a class recently to all the medical professionals, mental health professionals, and psychiatrists here at Project Harmony. So he is saying that the pyromania is very rare. He in Maryland deals with about 300 to 400 youth fire setters a year. He's had 2 in his career, and he's been doing it for almost 30 years. Safe, unsafe, troubled, delinquent. That's really what we're trying to identify. Was it safe play? There really is no safe fire play. Was it the child supervised? In other words, was mom, dad, parent, or home? What kind of risk are they to the community? to us as firefighters, to the houses surrounding them, to mom, dad, parent, or guardian. The intervention piece is that's where we come in. We try to prevent it early. That's why we're getting into the schools. That's why we as an Omaha Fire Department feel it's so important to make sure we start early, all the way down to pre-K, and let them look at the fire trucks, letting know there's a relationship there with the Omaha Fire Department. So we try to prevent it early identification if possible, immediate treatment, and graduating sanctions. So graduating sanctions can go all the way from, hey, you know what? We need to take this class, get well educated on what fire does. Fire is a tool, not a toy, making good choices, good decisions, all the way up to after about 12 to 13 years old, we can charge a child with arson. Usually that's in the 3rd degree, but it just really depends on what kind of fire play it was and what was happening at the time. So fire behaviors follows some natural steps. And when I asked that question earlier, I was just wondering how many people said when was the first time they were introduced to fire? Dramatic pause, right? So usually I will tell you, and most adults in the room are listening right now may or may not get this correctly, but the first time you were actually introduced to fire was about age 1, right? So that was your first birthday party. And if you're anything like my wife, not only did my little ones have to blow out the candle, but we had to relight it 3 or 4 times because she didn't get a good picture. So we're introduced to fire very young, all the way from our first birthday. Some fire interest is what we call it, between the ages of 3 and 5. These can be corrected pretty early on. Usually they're trying to imitate adult, whether it be a smoker in the house or mom or dad that has a candle. They see them using the matches or lighters, and that's what they do. By the way, there is no such thing as a fire safe or a child-proof lighter. We've recently had a 3-year-old who started a bed on fire, and she knew exactly how to use this thing. So the different levels, there's interest, there's starting, and setting. And we'll get into that a little bit here. So fire starting starts place usually in a supervised setting. Engage at least one unsupervised fire a year. That's usually the boys that are listening right now. The men usually have played with some sort of fire. Recently, I was at a large group at Project Harmony, and I was very surprised to see that also women also are playing with fire very young. Usually better even by curiosity. Hey, what does this do? Why? And they're fascinated. The last kid that I just talked to, actually Friday, he said that he was fascinated by the color. That was the reason he was lighting the fire. Usually using matches or lighters, something very readily available, and the targets are non-specific. Basically, they just want to use those lighter. They might light the carpet on fire. They might light a curtain on fire. They might light a piece of paper on fire. They just want to see what it was going to do. And usually no way to put it out, nor any forethought into that. So fire setting is a repeat. So in other words, now they played with it a little bit. Now they want to try it again. This is usually planned. So now, you know what, I got the matches and lighters taken away from me this time. I know where they hide them. I'm going to go back and get them. And this time I'm going to be really quiet about it. And I'm going to start a fire. It's going to be in the basement and nobody's ever going to know about it. So they usually know what's going on. They understand the intent, whether it's on purpose or not. Usually collected or gathered the matches, the lighters, the paper, and then they hide it. Target specific. Usually hey, look, I'm going to play with this fire, but here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do it in the closet. Nobody's going to see it. Mom might smell it, so I'm going to make sure I open up the window. So that's what we call fire setting. And then the last one that I unfortunately didn't put on here, and that's the delinquent fire setter. The delinquent fire setter is a person that's starting a fire on purpose, usually at schools. They are either number 1, wanting attention, number 2, wanting to get out of school, and there's something else going on in their background. So here's some important things that if you don't take anything away from what we talked about today, I would like to at least look at these. These are the other things that are going on. So if we're past that curiosity stage, we're looking at some other things such as emotional disorders, abuse, sexual assault, bullying, family dysfunction, chronic stress, and unplanned life changes. This is where, you know what, I played with some fire earlier and I got a lot of attention. I'm going to do it again, but this way I know I'm going to call, there's going to be a call to action, and somebody else is either going to make me aware of it. I'm going to make them aware of, hey, this is what happened and why. And we'll get into a couple of those stories that I am able to share with you. Youth fire setting is one of the costliest things right now, exceeding most crimes, usually unsupervised, classified as a crime as arson 1. We can do that. And that's kind of changed in the law. It's actually 11 years old. We can actually charge with arson as a felony up to age 11. So local statistics, here's what we're looking at. You can see some of my higher numbers, usually about 12 to 13. That's where I'm getting into. These are beyond my curiosity kids. They're starting fires on purpose. They are either found out it was really cool. They thought it was really cool. So 12 to 13 is kind of where I live and dwell a lot in with my kiddos. The younger ones, there's not a whole bunch, to be honest with you, there's not a whole bunch we can do with them. We can make sure that we educate the mom, dad, parent, or guardian to make sure they're well educated. And number one, they're hiding their matches and lighters, locking them up. Really, that's kind of what I can do with the little ones. After that, we get into some other programs. But even with the 3 and 4 year olds, we are doing that organ scale that I talked about earlier. Basically, this is a question and answers, not only by the child, but also by the adult. Once they've answered that for me, I can tell whether I can make the decision whether we need to get them into other services, such as, do they need to go to Project Harmony, and do they need a forensic interview? Or if they don't need a forensic interview, do they need help? The mom or parent has said, hey, you know what, my child has some learning difficulty, they have ADHD, and they have alcohol fetal syndrome. You know what, are you getting the help you need? We can help you with that. So, and that's what's really made our partnership with Project Harmony so successful. And it's really gone a long ways. We've taken leaps and bounds in the last couple of years, and it's been all thanks to our partnerships with Project Harmony. A whole bunch of mental health therapists and doctors that came in and did a class about 4 months ago at Project Harmony. My mentor out of Maryland, Dr. Stanolnik, came down and taught them what he does and how he particularly deals with a child that has youth fire play in their background. So that was a kind of a cool thing that we did recently. The peak fires incidents among youth is between 7th and 8th grade, about that 11, 12, 13-year-olds. And usually during the day, that's a statistic that we have found. We track everything. Usually it's during the day, which is, you would think it's at night, but it's not. So some important facts to remember. Number one, that we're here to help. The fires must be reported regardless of size, regardless of intent. And this is more for, number one, the parents, a lot for schools, a lot for daycares. Sometimes they don't want to say anything. They don't want to make a big deal out of it. But unfortunately, by doing that, we might be covering up a behavior that we really need to know more about and get into that fire behavior and why. So all of them must be reported. That's currently what we're working on. I'm working on particularly with the schools this year. And whether the situation, call 911, always call 911. We'd much rather have a fire truck come out, and then we'll have an investigator come out, and then we'll at least get the paperwork started. And that's not just for Omaha Fire, but that can be anywhere. Most fire departments in all 4 states probably have what they call a youth fire intervention program or a youth fire setting program, and that's available. In some departments, it's their fire investigators who also take care of the youth fire setting. So these programs are available throughout. So once a juvenile has been identified, we make that assessment. And then if we have them take legal courses of action after that age, about 10, 11, 12 years old, we can actually go ahead with arson. The other entities that I work with is fire investigations, probations. I also work with Project Harmony, DHHS, CPS. Those are all the agencies that we helped collaborate to make sure that we're trying to take care of all the citizens. So as of January 2022, this is last year's numbers. I can tell you I'm over that right now. We had 84 youth in the programs. 2 of them were repeat offenders. 29 were from Instagram, and 37 of them were educated. The rest went to other services through Project Harmony. They're kind of our main go-to. We'll get them into Project Harmony system, and they'll take care of it from there, which has been a great help. Instagram, talk a little bit about that. My biggest enemies right now for my particular job is Instagram and TikTok. Unfortunately, that Instagram incident was a challenge. There was actually some prizes involved. What you had to do is go out and start a fire, whether it be at a porta potty, a mailbox. You had to video it, and then after you videoed it, you put up on Instagram, and there would be a contest to who had the biggest fire. So again, social media has been, besides lighters and matches, my biggest enemy right now is social media, especially TikTok. So in 21, a little bit about our statistics. Out of the 84, 10 of them were in schools. These are where the fire started. 12 were in residential. 19 were outside properties, such as going in a ravine, or hey, there's a big pile of logs back there. Let's go try to start those on fire. And then the 36 in Instagram. I will tell you currently right now, and then just look at my numbers. I am currently at 72 as of Friday. My numbers will probably be in the upwards to probably, I'm estimating about 100 to 110 for this year, being 2022. And again, as I said earlier, I'm probably missing, statistically, national statistics are saying I'm missing about 40 to 50% of those kids. So the biggest thing with 2021 was COVID. All those kids were home. That was a high peak in that number. So COVID certainly didn't help us much. Them being at home so often, getting a little more time to explore their homes, finding the matches or lighters, figuring out new ways to set fires, watching a lot of videos about fires. So that's kind of that comparison. We've got, and the reason we don't have more youth fire setters. So everybody says that, hey, you know, your numbers are going up. Well, it's not, they're going up. We're just doing a better job of identifying. And that's probably one of the biggest takeaways from this. As a community as a whole, not just Omaha and Nebraska, but all the surrounding states, is really, we need to take a longer look at this. I understand that most fire departments don't have the manpower resources to be able to spend on this, but it's going to be real important to stop those before they begin, because at some point this could come back to those fire departments of, hey, you knew this kid was playing with matches, but you didn't do anything about it, right? So it's need to take a proactive approach, whether you're voluntary, whether you're in a voluntary fire department or whether you're paid. We have departments, I know there's one in Nebraska that may be a substantial size, and they had 3 youth fire setters last year. The problem, I think, was manpower, right? It's a matter of being able to get the right resources and the right people in the right programs. So here's the people that I work with. The Omaha Police Department's been a great job. They do all my background searches. Usually what I do, here's how it works. I find about the child. I run a background, making sure I know, kind of trying to get myself set up for what I'm about to walk into. Then once I do that, I go out, we do the interview. Usually we have that at Project Harmony now. We used to do it at the home. We don't do it at the home anymore. We used to do it in a group setting. So you can see we kind of progressed. Now we do it at Project Harmony. It's a one-on-one situation. We go through our Oregon scale. Once we go through our Oregon scale, we decide whether we can educate the child or whether they need to go on to other services and then come back to us. Project Harmony, one of my biggest supporters, we love them to death. Juvenile Assessment Center, work with them quite a bit, because once we do charge arson, we want to make sure that we get them back. We want to make sure that once they get those situations taken care of, when they do their interview, once they're in intake, once that interview is done with them, and there's no other situations, they're just playing with fire. We don't want to charge them with arson, but we have to at that point legally. And we want to see if we can get them on probation and see if we can get them educated. So long story short, it's really about educating the child. Other referral sources, I talked about this a little bit. I skipped a couple of those. Mental health services, I've had a couple psychiatrists actually call us. Medical centers, University of Nebraska's called us several times. Bergen's called us several times. Police officers themselves being out in the public all the time. I actually had a police officer report to me a child playing with fire. Had to detain them because they were starting one of the playground equipment on fire. Child care facilities, schools, parents, and fire service themselves. So how can you help? How do we mitigate all these situations? And I think I said it in the beginning. Number one is starting out at home, making sure that we're going all the way back to our safety stuff that we learned in maybe possibly third grade or so. And if you haven't learned it, we have great resources, not only on our website, but on the NFPA website to teach the kids early what to do in case of a fire, how not to play with fire. Fire is a tool, not a toy. Making sure we do all the preventative things before they actually end up coming to see me. And I'll just close with this. A lot of people ask what has been one of your worst situations, and I don't want to get into a lot of details. But I will tell you, I was probably 2 or 3 years ago, we were called out to a school. A girl was in the bathroom and she started a fire in the bathroom. Once we found out what she started on fire, I thought it was important. We thought it was important as an Omaha Fire Department that a male not do the interview, that a female did the interview. She did do the interview, and what she started on fire was her underwear. And she did that because it was so important to her that she started that underwear on fire at the school, because that was the pair of underwear that she was raped in for the last 3 months. So that's how dark this gets. But it's important that, number one, we knew about it, we acted on it right away. And most of us that are probably listening to this are mandatory reporters. So make sure we do our job, right? As mandatory reporters, at least letting, if the minimum, letting CPS know or your local fire department know, so they can take the actions that need to happen. So with that, I will leave it up to some questions and any comments.
Hi, Mike. Great. Thank you for all the great information you shared today. One question I had is, what kind of bilingual information do you share or have available? And what are your pieces of advice if other communities want to put that forward?
So we actually, before we brought on a gentleman named Sergio Robles, he's been with us for almost 7 years now. He is our Spanish liaison for the South Omaha community, and that's actually his district. He handles South Omaha. So he is bilingual. He works for the Omaha Fire Department. And basically, when he's not out putting out smoke detectors and helping us in public education, he is out on the streets talking to the Spanish community about fire safety. Matter of fact, he goes down to the Spanish consulate every week. So he's getting them early on, before they're even getting their visas and everything else. He's talking about fire safety. What's been really cool for us is because we do have UNO here. UNO has been a great partner with us. So if we have something as current as the Vietnamese population, we can go to them and they'll be glad to help us with students. And that might be a way for smaller departments, anyone who needs to reach out, find your local colleges. And I have a list actually right back here on my bulletin board. And I have a list of every language that we've dealt with. And I can call these people on and they're more than willing to volunteer their time. And a lot of this, again, is mostly volunteer. Great question. Great,
thank you. Let's see here. If there's any questions, please place them in the chat. If a different type of department or smaller department was interested in starting the Youth Firesetter Intervention Program, how would they go about that?
Awesome. So great question. So it's really easily done. So you can go on the NFPA website and you can go to, there's several schools throughout the United States where I went to school for my, what we call youth fire intervention counselor, intervention specialist. It's a 7-day school. Went to Des Moines to do my school. And we really get into a lot of the details, but that can be done. You go to the NFPA website and you look up Youth Fire Intervention, and they have classes pretty much all over. I know with mostly Region 7, it's out of Des Moines is where we do our most of our classes, but there are local agencies that are starting. So for us, the Fire Marshal's Office, Nebraska Fire Marshal's Office is starting out for these classes. So there's always a way. And you know what, if nothing else, reach out to me. I'd be glad to help you do that. More than willing to do that. And Lauren, if you'll do me a favor, just share my email and I'll be glad to help anybody out. And also, if anybody else has any further questions.
Great, thank you. I don't see any further questions here, so I appreciate your time today and thanks for spending part of Fire Prevention Month with us. And I'll go ahead and share your information, and we appreciate everyone joining.
Awesome.
Thank you, Mike.
You. Bye. Lauren.